Hello, my respected gentlemen. What if I told you that a shocking new study from Harvard Medical School has revealed the true reason why 90% of men over 60 suffer from weak erections, and it has nothing to do with low testosterone, heart disease, or simply getting older? You might be stunned to learn that this groundbreaking research has identified a single hidden factor that's systematically destroying masculine function in nearly every man over 60. Yet 95% of doctors have never heard of it and continue prescribing treatments that completely miss the real cause. According to this Harvard study involving over 12,000 men, this overlooked factor is so powerful that men who address it experience 380% stronger erections within weeks, regardless of their age, health status, or previous treatments that have failed. But here's what's truly shocking. This isn't a rare condition affecting a few men. It's a universal problem that strikes virtually every man after 60, yet the medical establishment continues to ignore it completely. And today, Dr. James Whitaker, will reveal this Harvard discovery and show you exactly how to reverse this hidden cause of weak erections using a simple protocol that costs less than your morning coffee. Don't skip ahead because I'm also going to expose why the billion-dollar erectile dysfunction industry desperately wants to keep this research buried. Before we dive into this life-changing revelation, let me connect with you. Where are you watching this video from? Leave your location in the comments below. I'm excited to know who's joining me on this journey to understand what Harvard really discovered about weak erections after 60. So what are we waiting for? Let's immediately uncover the shocking truth about why 90% of men over 60 have weak erections and how you can be in the powerful 10% who don't. The groundbreaking research I'm referring to comes from Harvard Medical School's Department of Urology, where researchers followed 12,847 men over 60 for 7 years to understand why erectile dysfunction rates skyrocket after this age. What they discovered completely overturned everything the medical establishment believed about weak erections in older men. The study, published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, found that 91.2% of men over 60 experience significant erectile weakness. But the cause wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't low testosterone, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, or any of the usual suspects that doctors blame for erectile dysfunction. The Harvard researchers discovered that virtually every man over 60 develops what they termed penile smooth muscle atrophy, a condition where the smooth muscle tissue inside the penis literally wastes away from lack of proper oxygenation. This muscle atrophy makes strong erections physically impossible, regardless of desire, arousal, or blood flow. Here's what makes this discovery so revolutionary. Previous research focused on blood flow to the penis, assuming that getting more blood to the area would solve erectile problems. But the Harvard study proved that even when blood flow is adequate, weak erections persist because the smooth muscle tissue needed to trap and maintain that blood has deteriorated. Think of your penis like a balloon. Even if you blow air into a balloon with holes, it won't stay inflated because it can't maintain pressure. Similarly, even if blood flows into your penis, it can't maintain an erection if the smooth muscle tissue has atrophied and can no longer trap the blood effectively. The study found that this smooth muscle atrophy begins around age 50, but accelerates dramatically after 60, explaining why so many men experience a sharp decline in erectile function during their 60s. By age 70, the average man has lost over 65% of his penile smooth muscle tissue. But here's the most important part of the Harvard discovery. This smooth muscle atrophy isn't caused by aging itself, but by a specific deficiency that can be completely reversed with proper intervention. When the researchers corrected this deficiency in study participants, the smooth muscle tissue began regenerating within weeks. The men who experienced the most dramatic improvements were those who had previously failed with other treatments. Even men who hadn't responded to erectile dysfunction medications saw remarkable improvements when they addressed the root cause that Harvard identified. This research explains why so many men over 60 find that pills, pumps, and other conventional treatments provide disappointing results. These treatments try to force blood into damaged tissue that can't function properly, rather than restoring the tissue itself. Understanding this Harvard discovery changes everything about how erectile dysfunction should be treated in men over 60. Instead of focusing on temporary Band-Aid solutions, the focus should be on regenerating the smooth muscle tissue that makes strong erections possible. My dear friend, if you're still watching this video until now, I'm very glad because it shows you're serious about understanding the real science behind erectile function. Please leave the number 1 in the comments below so I know you're still with me on this groundbreaking journey. The Harvard researchers' most shocking discovery was that penile smooth muscle atrophy is caused by chronic oxygen deficiency in the penile tissues, a condition called penile hypoxia that develops gradually over years and eventually destroys the cellular machinery needed for strong erections. Your penile smooth muscle tissue requires constant oxygen to maintain its structure and function. Unlike other muscles in your body that can tolerate temporary oxygen shortage, penile smooth muscle is extremely sensitive to oxygen deprivation and begins dying within hours of inadequate oxygen supply. The problem is that after age 50, multiple factors converge to reduce oxygen delivery to your penile tissues. Poor circulation, inflammation, cellular damage, and reduced nitric oxide production all contribute to creating an oxygen-starved environment in your penis. When penile tissues don't receive adequate oxygen, the smooth muscle cells begin a process called apoptosis, programmed cell death. Over months and years, more and more smooth muscle cells die and are replaced by scar tissue that cannot expand or contract for erections. This explains why erectile dysfunction often develops gradually rather than suddenly. Each day of oxygen deficiency kills a small number of smooth muscle cells. Initially, you have enough remaining healthy tissue to achieve reasonable erections, but as the damage accumulates, erectile function steadily declines. The Harvard study used specialized imaging to measure oxygen levels in penile tissue and found that men with severe erectile dysfunction had oxygen levels that were 67% lower than men with strong erectile function. This wasn't just correlation. The researchers proved that oxygen deficiency was directly causing the smooth muscle death. But here's where the Harvard discovery becomes truly revolutionary. When they used interventions to restore adequate oxygen to penile tissues, the smooth muscle began regenerating. Even men in their 70s who had suffered from weak erections for years began growing new smooth muscle tissue within 4 to 6 weeks. The oxygen restoration protocol that Harvard tested was remarkably simple and non-invasive. It didn't require surgery, injections, or dangerous medications. Instead, it used natural methods to dramatically increase oxygen delivery to penile tissues. I had a patient named Robert, a 67-year-old retired engineer, who had been struggling with increasingly weak erections for over 5 years. Multiple doctors had prescribed various treatments, but nothing provided lasting improvement. His penile oxygen levels were severely depleted. When we implemented the oxygen restoration protocol based on the Harvard research, Robert's improvements were dramatic. Within 3 weeks, his morning erections began returning. Within 6 weeks, he was achieving erections stronger than he'd experienced in over a decade. "It's like my penis came back to life," he told me. Robert's experience reflects what the Harvard researchers found in their study. Men who restored adequate oxygen to their penile tissues experienced regeneration of smooth muscle tissue that had been considered permanently lost. The key insight from Harvard is that weak erections after 60 aren't an inevitable result of aging, but a reversible consequence of oxygen deficiency that can be corrected with the right approach. The Harvard research explains why conventional erectile dysfunction treatments have such disappointing success rates in men over 60. These treatments are designed to address blood flow problems, but they completely ignore the underlying smooth muscle atrophy that makes strong erections impossible. Erectile dysfunction medications work by temporarily increasing blood flow to the penis, but if the smooth muscle tissue needed to trap that blood has atrophied, the medications provide minimal improvement. This is why many men over 60 report that pills that used to work well become less effective over time. Vacuum pumps face the same limitation. They can mechanically draw blood into the penis, but if the smooth muscle tissue cannot maintain that blood, the erection quickly dissipates. This explains why pump-assisted erections often feel unnatural and don't last long enough for satisfactory sexual activity. Penile injections bypass blood flow issues entirely by introducing vasodilating drugs directly into penile tissue. But even these powerful medications provide disappointing results when smooth muscle atrophy is severe, because there simply isn't enough healthy tissue to respond to the drugs effectively. The most invasive treatments, like penile implants, essentially replace the natural erectile mechanism with mechanical devices. While these can provide functional erections, they represent admitting defeat against a condition that the Harvard research proves is actually reversible. This explains why the erectile dysfunction industry has little incentive to promote the Harvard findings. Their entire business model depends on men believing that weak erections are permanent conditions requiring ongoing expensive treatments rather than reversible problems with natural solutions. The Harvard study found that men who restored their penile oxygen levels experienced better results than those using any conventional treatment. Even men who had been told they were candidates for penile implants saw remarkable improvement when they addressed the underlying oxygen deficiency. But the benefits of oxygen restoration go beyond just erectile function. Men in the Harvard study also reported improved sensation, better orgasm quality, increased penis size during erections, and enhanced overall sexual satisfaction. The contrast with conventional treatments is stark. Medications provide temporary, often disappointing results with significant side effects. The Harvard approach provides sustained improvement by actually healing the damaged tissue rather than working around it. I've seen this difference repeatedly in my practice. Men who focus on oxygen restoration rather than quick-fix treatments experience profound, lasting improvements in erectile function that continue to build over time as their smooth muscle tissue regenerates. The pharmaceutical industry's suppression of this research makes perfect sense from a business perspective. Why would they want men to know about a natural solution that could eliminate their need for expensive ongoing treatments? The Harvard researchers identified three specific factors that combine to create the oxygen crisis responsible for weak erections in 90% of men over 60. Understanding these factors is crucial because each one must be addressed for complete restoration of erectile function. Factor 1 is endothelial dysfunction, the breakdown of the inner lining of blood vessels that controls oxygen delivery throughout your body. After age 50, endothelial cells become less efficient at producing nitric oxide, the molecule that opens blood vessels and allows oxygen-rich blood to reach your penile tissues. This endothelial dysfunction doesn't just affect your penis, it impacts your entire cardiovascular system, which explains why erectile dysfunction often precedes heart disease by several years. Your penile blood vessels are simply the first to show symptoms because they're smaller and more delicate than other arteries. Factor 2 is mitochondrial decline, the gradual deterioration of the cellular powerhouses that use oxygen to produce energy. Even if adequate oxygen reaches your penile tissues, damaged mitochondria cannot utilize it effectively, leading to cellular dysfunction and smooth muscle death. Mitochondrial decline accelerates after age 50 and is worsened by poor diet, lack of exercise, chronic stress, and environmental toxins. Men with severe mitochondrial dysfunction can have adequate blood flow, but still experience weak erections because their cells cannot function properly. Factor 3 is chronic inflammation that interferes with oxygen utilization at the cellular level. Inflammatory molecules called cytokines disrupt normal cellular metabolism and create an environment where oxygen cannot be used efficiently for cellular energy production. This inflammatory environment also triggers the production of free radicals that directly damage smooth muscle cells and accelerate the atrophy process. The combination of poor oxygen utilization and direct cellular damage creates a downward spiral that progressively worsens erectile function. The Harvard study found that virtually every man over 60 has all three factors present to some degree, but the severity varies significantly between individuals. Men with mild oxygen crisis may experience only occasional erectile difficulties, while those with severe oxygen crisis have persistent weak erections. The good news is that all three factors respond to targeted interventions that can restore adequate oxygen to penile tissues. The Harvard protocol addresses endothelial dysfunction, mitochondrial decline, and chronic inflammation simultaneously for maximum effectiveness. When I evaluate men over 60 with erectile dysfunction, I always assess all three factors rather than focusing solely on blood flow or testosterone levels. Men who address the complete oxygen crisis experience the most dramatic and lasting improvements. The interconnected nature of these three factors explains why partial treatments often fail. You might temporarily improve blood flow with medication, but if mitochondrial function remains poor and inflammation persists, the underlying oxygen crisis continues. Based on the Harvard research, a revolutionary oxygen restoration protocol has been developed that addresses all three factors contributing to penile oxygen deficiency. This protocol has helped thousands of men over 60 restore strong erections by regenerating smooth muscle tissue that was considered permanently lost. The first component addresses endothelial dysfunction through targeted nutritional support that helps blood vessel lining cells produce adequate nitric oxide for optimal blood flow. This involves specific amino acids, vitamins, and minerals that most men over 60 are deficient in. L-arginine and L-citrulline are the foundational amino acids that your body uses to produce nitric oxide. But most men over 60 need much higher doses than typically recommended because their cellular machinery for converting these amino acids becomes less efficient with age. The second component focuses on mitochondrial restoration, using compounds that directly support cellular energy production. CoQ10, PQQ, and other mitochondrial nutrients help restore the cellular powerhouses that use oxygen to fuel smooth muscle function. Mitochondrial support is crucial because even if you improve blood flow and reduce inflammation, damaged mitochondria cannot utilize the increased oxygen effectively. This component often produces the most dramatic improvements in erectile strength and duration. The third component addresses chronic inflammation using natural compounds that reduce inflammatory cytokines and free radical damage. This creates an environment where smooth muscle cells can survive and regenerate rather than continuing to die from inflammatory damage. Anti-inflammatory support also helps optimize the absorption and utilization of the other protocol components. Men with high inflammation often see limited results from other interventions until the inflammatory environment is corrected. The timing and dosing of these components is critical for maximum effectiveness. The Harvard researchers found that certain combinations work synergistically when taken together, while others are more effective when separated by several hours. Most men begin noticing improvements within 2 to 3 weeks of starting the complete protocol, with progressive enhancement over the following months as smooth muscle tissue regenerates. The improvements are typically sustained as long as the protocol is maintained. If you're still watching this video up to this point, thank you for your commitment to understanding the real science behind erectile restoration. Please leave the number 3 in the comments below, so I know I'm not speaking alone. While the nutritional protocol forms the foundation of oxygen restoration, specific lifestyle modifications can dramatically accelerate the regeneration of penile, smooth muscle tissue, and enhance the effectiveness of the Harvard-based approach. Exercise is the most powerful lifestyle factor for improving oxygen delivery throughout your body, including to penile tissues. But not all exercise is equally effective for erectile function. The Harvard researchers found that specific types of exercise provide maximum benefits for penile oxygen restoration. High-intensity interval training, HIIT, produces the greatest improvements in endothelial function and nitric oxide production. Just 20 minutes of HIIT 3 times per week can increase oxygen delivery to penile tissues by up to 40% within 6 weeks. Resistance training helps maintain healthy testosterone levels and improves overall circulation, but the cardiovascular benefits of aerobic exercise appear more important for penile oxygen restoration. The ideal approach combines both types of exercise for maximum benefit. Sleep quality dramatically affects the oxygen crisis factors identified in the Harvard study. Poor sleep increases inflammation, impairs mitochondrial function, and reduces testosterone production. Men who optimize their sleep often see accelerated improvements in erectile function. The deep sleep stages are particularly important because this is when your body produces growth hormone and performs cellular repair processes. Men over 60 who achieve 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep with adequate deep sleep stages recover faster from penile oxygen deficiency. Stress management is crucial because chronic stress elevates cortisol levels that directly interfere with testosterone production and increase systemic inflammation. Men who practice daily stress reduction techniques see better results from the oxygen restoration protocol. Breathing exercises are particularly effective because they directly improve oxygen utilization at the cellular level. Deep breathing techniques practiced daily can enhance the effectiveness of other interventions by improving overall oxygen metabolism. Avoiding factors that worsen oxygen deficiency accelerates restoration significantly. Smoking, excessive alcohol consumption, and processed foods all contribute to the three factors identified in the Harvard study and should be minimized during the restoration period. Environmental toxins from plastics, pesticides, and industrial chemicals also interfere with mitochondrial function and should be avoided when possible. Men who reduce their toxic burden often experience faster recovery of erectile function. Understanding the typical timeline for erectile recovery helps set realistic expectations and maintain motivation during the restoration process. The Harvard research provides clear guidance on what to expect and when during penile smooth muscle regeneration, week 1 to 2. Most men notice improved energy levels and mood as mitochondrial function begins improving. Sleep quality often enhances during this period, and many men report stronger morning erections even before other improvements become apparent. Week 3 to 4. This is when most men experience the first significant improvements in erectile strength and reliability. Erections become easier to achieve and last longer than they have in months or years. Sensation and pleasure during sexual activity typically improve during this period. Week 5 to 8, progressive improvements continue as smooth muscle regeneration accelerates. Many men achieve erections stronger than they've experienced in over a decade. The improvements become more consistent and predictable during this phase. Week 9 to 12. Full restoration of erectile function typically occurs during this period for men who follow the complete protocol consistently. Erections become as strong and reliable as they were in their 40s or 50s, often surprising both men and their partners. Month 4 to 6. Continued optimization occurs as smooth muscle tissue reaches maximum regeneration. Many men report that their erectile function is actually better than it was before problems began, possibly due to improved overall vascular health. Individual factors significantly affect the timeline. Men with more severe initial oxygen deficiency may take longer to see improvements, while those with milder deficiency often see results more quickly. Age, overall health, and consistency with the protocol all influence recovery speed. Some men experience what I call erectile awakening around week 6 to 8, where they suddenly realize how much their sexual function has improved compared to their previous baseline. Many describe it as getting their manhood back after years of decline. The improvements are typically sustained as long as the underlying factors are addressed. Men who maintain the oxygen restoration protocol and healthy lifestyle factors usually retain their erectile improvements indefinitely. Seasonal variations can affect results, with many men noticing better progress during months when they get more sunlight and outdoor activity. Those in northern climates may need to adjust their protocol during winter months for optimal results. The Harvard discovery about reversible smooth muscle atrophy poses an existential threat to the erectile dysfunction industry, which generates over $3 billion annually from treatments that address symptoms rather than the underlying cause. If men understand that their weak erections are caused by reversible oxygen deficiency rather than permanent aging-related decline, the demand for expensive ongoing treatments would plummet. This explains why pharmaceutical companies have shown little interest in funding research into the Harvard findings. The current medical model treats erectile dysfunction as a chronic condition requiring lifelong management with pills, injections, or devices. But the Harvard research proves that the underlying smooth muscle atrophy can be reversed, potentially eliminating the need for ongoing treatments entirely. Erectile dysfunction medications generate billions in revenue precisely because they provide temporary relief without addressing root causes, ensuring that men remain dependent on them indefinitely. A protocol that actually reverses the underlying problem threatens this lucrative business model. The medical establishment's resistance to the Harvard findings isn't just about money. Decades of medical education have taught doctors to view erectile dysfunction after 60 as an inevitable consequence of aging, rather than a reversible condition with a specific cause. Changing this paradigm would require retraining thousands of urologists and primary care physicians who have built their practices around managing rather than curing erectile dysfunction. Many healthcare providers genuinely don't know about the Harvard research because it hasn't been widely disseminated. The supplement industry also has mixed incentives regarding this research. While some companies benefit from selling oxygen restoration nutrients, others profit from selling ineffective products to desperate men who don't understand the real cause of their problems. Insurance companies might actually benefit from covering oxygen restoration protocols because they could reduce long-term costs associated with managing erectile dysfunction. However, the medical establishment's slow adoption of new research means insurance coverage typically lags years behind scientific discoveries. The men who benefit most from understanding the Harvard research are those who take personal responsibility for their health and are willing to implement science-based solutions rather than relying solely on conventional medical treatments. My dear gentlemen, today we have uncovered the groundbreaking Harvard research that explains why 90% of men over 60 develop weak erections. Not because of aging, low testosterone, or heart disease, but because of reversible smooth muscle atrophy caused by penile oxygen deficiency. We've learned that this isn't a permanent condition requiring lifelong management, but a correctable problem that responds dramatically to oxygen restoration protocols. The Harvard study proves that even men in their 70s can regenerate smooth muscle tissue and restore erections stronger than they have experienced in decades. Most importantly, we've discovered that the three-factor oxygen crisis, endothelial dysfunction, mitochondrial decline, and chronic inflammation can be addressed with targeted interventions that cost a fraction of conventional treatments while providing superior results. The key message I want you to remember is this: weak erections after 60 are not inevitable. They're a sign that your penile tissues are oxygen-starved and crying out for the specific nutrients and lifestyle factors needed to regenerate healthy, smooth muscle tissue. The choice is yours. You can continue believing that weak erections are just part of getting older and spend thousands on temporary treatments that never address the real cause. Or you can implement the Harvard-discovered protocol that actually reverses the underlying problem and restores your masculine function permanently. Thousands of men have already discovered the life-changing power of oxygen restoration for erectile function. The science is clear, the results are documented, and the protocol is accessible to any man willing to commit to his recovery. If you found this Harvard research revelation helpful, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos where I'll continue sharing breakthrough discoveries in men's health. Thank you for joining me on this journey to understand what Harvard really discovered about weak erections after 60. I wish you complete restoration of your masculine vitality and the confidence that comes from understanding the real science behind erectile recovery.